You are watching Culture Shock on the Conscious Resistance, and this is John Vibes. Today I'm going to talk about how technology impacts the workplace and the psychological reaction that people have to that. And this is something that I believe happens across all fields of work and pretty much throughout most of history, but it has kind of happened more often as technological progress has sped up. And one of the interesting things that I want to point out before I start is that most of the things that we talk about that happen on a grand scale in world politics or mainstream economics, we can look into our personal lives, into small social communities, um, and things like that, and we can see the same things at work. In philosophy, they refer to this as the microcosm and the macrocosm. And in many situations, you can observe how the same things are at play in all these situations. It's just bigger and smaller versions of it. So that's going to kind of reflect on this issue when I bring my own personal experience into it. But I want to talk about Luddites specifically. For those of you who aren't familiar with the term Luddite, it is a term that was attached to a group of 19th century textile artisans who were losing their jobs and who were experiencing a drop in wages because of the technology that was being developed during the Industrial Revolution. That technology allowed lower skilled workers to get into the fields that they were doing simply by learning how to work machines. And this brought a whole bunch of new people into the workplace for these entrenched interests to compete with for their own jobs, which they had, they could count on those jobs. They knew that they were going to have those jobs tomorrow for their whole lives until this situation happened. Now, the way that they reacted to it, instead of adapting, instead of looking for new jobs, and instead of trying to learn the technology themselves, they went around beating people up and burning the factories that were using this technology and that were employing new people. So they became known as the Luddites. Now, throughout history, this term has been attached to pretty much anybody who has a fear of technology, especially when it comes to a specific economic interest that they have in that technology. In most cases, it's because they're losing their jobs, because whatever they're doing is being replaced by some technology. So this can be seen with mathematicians were probably really angry about the calculator, candle makers about the electric light, and horse and buggy riders or whatever they called them about cars. And this has happened all throughout history. Now, in my own line of work, those of you that follow my other stuff know that I promote raves and underground dance music events. And so I'm constantly coming into contact with DJs. Most of the people on my social networking pages are DJs. And the debate that I have noticed raging for years is this debate in analog versus digital DJ. And that's basically traditional vinyl turntables and a mixer would be the analog, and digital is a lot of the new technology that's coming out with really advanced CDJs with flash drives and things like that, controllers where people have a giant mixer on a tiny controller that they can do a whole lot of things real quickly with. And a lot of this new technology is a lot cheaper than the vinyl is. And people can buy tunes for really cheap. And instead of spending $100 on records every week like a lot of the older DJs did and still do. So the debate that is developing now, let's think about the Luddites when we talk about this, is the DJs who have been doing this for about 10 or so years, maybe longer in some cases. They have amassed this vinyl collection. They have been, you know, practicing their art, their skill for, as long as they have been, and they see that their bookings are starting to dry up. They're not getting as many bookings as they used to. People are trying to pay them less, maybe, and they start to see that the reason is because the market is oversaturated. Where once there were not too many DJs because it was really hard to learn how to use vinyl turntables and it costed a lot to get all the equipment, now the market's completely saturated because the barrier to entry has been lowered, just in the case of the Industrial Revolution. So now that the barrier to entry has been lowered, as most people say, anybody can become a DJ. And a lot of people think that's a bad thing. Most of the people who are on soapboxes about this being a bad thing are ones who have either an economic or some kind of career situation where they have a stake in the matter. And at first, when I encountered this argument, because I respected so many of the older DJs that did practice their skill for such a long time, I had went along with that end of the argument. And then I started learning a little bit more about economics and history, and I thought to myself, wait, like, this is the same argument that everybody is having in every single industry. So nowadays I really do side with the technology because I think it's completely inevitable. I think that our generation has experienced more change than any other generation on the face of the earth, especially when it comes to technology. So for us to expect to be able to hone any particular skill and have that as our moneymaker or our whatever for the rest of our lives, I think is a little bit unrealistic, because there is all this change going on. Even our ancient ancestors who were out hunting and gathering in the woods, they experienced their environment changing. They had to change their tools, change the way they work, change the way they work with their tools. They had to move places sometimes. And this is what happens. We're living in an earth where nothing is guaranteed. So, and we're also constantly progressing. Now, we have to expect to, at different points in our lives, learn different skills to continue to survive, to continue to make ends meet. I've had to lose jobs for various reasons before. It sucked, but I found something else. And I think that people that get really stuck on things need to be one particular way, the one particular way that I learned my whole entire life, I think that especially in this world, it is unrealistic. That's not to say that in my example, there isn't a lot of skill and craft involved with vinyl mixing, and a lot of people that are skilled with that should still do that. They should still keep that alive. But they shouldn't hate on other people who are taking advantage of other technology. And especially, they should pay attention to the macrocosm and realize that other people have been in their situations before. Other people are in their situations right now. And we can learn a lot about ourselves and our psychological motivations for doing things if we just look back into history and see how some of these situations went down. I've already went long over my time for today, so I'm going to cut it off there. If you want to find more of my work, you can check out facebook.com/jgvibes, aotmr.com for my free books, and intellihub.com for my daily articles. Take care and have a good week. Peace.